Welcome back. Anybody who thought that this guy would just go quietly in the good night hasn't been paying attention to his career. Apparently, Donald Sterling, the aforementioned owner of the Clippers, is reportedly shopping for a team of attorneys as the NBA attempts to force him out of his ownership are underway. The question, though, is, does the NBA have an ironclad case against Sterling? Can it force him out over those comments that he made? Now, according to the league's constitution and its bylaws, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver or any other owner can start the process of forcing a sale by filing a written charge against Sterling. Sterling would then have 5 days to respond, and Silver would later call a hearing of the Board of Governors, which would vote after hearing the evidence against Sterling. If they get 23 out of the 30 votes, that's all they need. Now, a new CNN poll conducted on this, released Monday of this week, shows people are split on whether the NBA should force Sterling to sell the team. This surprised me a little bit. 47% said it should force him out, while 50% are against it. Now, if Sterling does sell the team, he's going to make a whole boatload of money. He bought the Clippers for $12 million back in '81. The team now valued somewhere in the neighborhood of $575. If it goes up for auction, many people believe it'll be at least a couple $100 million above that number. And a tax law that applies only to forced sales would also save him more than $3 million as well in the process. Okay, first off, so we cleared up for our audience. When we talk about Constitution, there's a whole different Constitution, not the U.S. version, but the NBA Constitution that you sign up for when you become one of 30 members here in this exclusive club. And it sure gives the NBA commissioner a lot of authority, not just to fine or suspend here or even use draconian powers against the franchise, but it's another thing to take over the asset and sell it while not retaining, obviously, the revenues from the sale. It goes back to the owner, but nonetheless, basically taking over the asset. Bill, when we were in break, you're not so sure the NBA isn't overstepping its bounds.
No, when we were in break, I said, where do I sign up to be part of that powerhouse legal team? No, look, I have some real problems with it. You know, the Constitution talks about when the owners file a written charge. Well, a written charge could be anything. Let's keep in mind here, he committed no crime.
But he doesn't have to.
Well, you know, the person who recorded him committed a crime. We're well
that's
aware
our own
of that.
problem. Right. That's now you're getting into criminal. But in this NBA case, he didn't need to commit a crime.
But what I'm saying is he could tie the NBA up in very expensive litigation. And if all the Constitution talks about is a written charge, you know, what was the intent and spirit of it? They talk about a written charge involving criminal conduct. The exercise of your First Amendment right to express your opinion, that is enough to force you to sell your team, to force you to forfeit your team?
Well, let's go into what the Constitution, or at least a portion of it, says about this. The decision to terminate, quote, shall be final, binding, and conclusive. And the person, in this case Sterling Ousted, waives any and all recourse to any court of law to review any such decision. Now, I know that doesn't end it, okay, but it's pretty clear. He signed up. He was a big boy. He knew what he was getting into. He's one of 30, and the league is bigger than him. Now, I think the bigger threat for the league is they're creating a precedent here. Some other guy says something anti-Semitic or somebody says something homophobic, and you already have a couple of the owners, including the owner, I believe, of the Cavaliers, who's got his own, some of the mortgage lending questions, and you have the DeVos family that owns the Magic, who's also been very vocal against gay marriage, including some really over-the-top stuff. That's a different world, but my question is, do we debate the league has the authority to do this? I think they do.
Well, the league, based upon their bylaws, they do. Okay, and even that can still be challenged. Someone could argue even that some of those terms are unconscionable. But when you stop and look at what Mr. Sterling did here, it's a private conversation. So it's different than the rancher who went out, Mr. Bundy, and starts talking about he doesn't believe in the United States and he's got armed conflict to stand off with the government. He doesn't expect this to go beyond his girlfriend. And if it was with his wife, it would be privileged, but they would still, the NBA would still argue that they could use it to take his ownership interest away from him. I think that when you start looking...
Isn't it, without, for the layman though, isn't it as simple as if you belong to a country club, okay, whether it's fair or not, if you go in there and say that I don't like, pick the ethnic group, and you say at the top of your lungs, whatever, the members say, time out. You're a member. You're a member. You may pay dues and everything, but you don't run the place. We have a governing body. We'll decide who's going to be a member here and who's not, and they can kick you out. Now, maybe you get your bond back or whatever. What's the difference?
If they follow their own rules in kicking you out. Now, Article 13 of the NBA bylaws lists 10 specific grounds that
And this is not
constitute
listed
cause-
among them racism.
Well, there's two. It's not racism. There's there's no doubt that 8 of 10 of these grounds don't apply. There are 2 very broad grounds that might conceivably apply. One of which requires willful behavior. Clearly, he didn't willfully violate anything because he was taped in his own home. There's another one that covers, behavior that adversely affects the league's integrity and reputation.
And that's what we're talking about.
That's very vague.
No. It's vague and it's tied to the underlying contracts. He has to violate the underlying contracts with the league in a way that adversely affects the league's integrity. He probably didn't do that. So they have to proffer a valid charge against him to strip him of his ownership interest. Then 3/4 of the owners have to vote in favor of sustaining that charge. And you make a great point. It's a slippery slope there, but for the grace of God go I. What's going to happen to me if I screw it up?
We do know at least, and Silver, I think, put him in a box when he did the presser that he did. Already 20 of the 30 are on record as saying definitively that they will vote to oust Sterling. I know that's not 23, but that all said, by the way, will we know how they vote?
I don't think so, and I don't think they're going to get the necessary votes, irrespective of what he said, because it could happen to them too. Now, here's the interesting question. Let's say they don't get the votes. There's a catch-all provision in there, like Article 23 or 24, that gives the commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis type powers to do whatever he deems to be in the best interest of the league, to protect the league's integrity. Suppose the owners, under the specific provision of the contract, don't find grounds that are sustainable and don't vote for his removal. Can the commissioner then autocratically act to throw him out? That, in the Pete Rose style. That would be.
But if they get the votes, and I disagree with that, I think they're going to get the 23. In fact, I think it'll be 29 out of 29. You guys disagree, but I think it's going to happen. Imagine the message then that goes out, right? And this is going to happen before the playoffs are over.
But
okay?
what also happens, though, the laws have to be, their bylaws have to be adhered to.
That's right.
And they have to be adhered to because you have to have a protection so that the unpopular owner doesn't simply get thrown out because people don't like him or her.
But you know how it can work. They can rewrite a morals clause and put it back into they can amend their own constitution. But
Not
they
after
first
he
want to get
commits
rid of
the
this
act.
cancer.
Not after he commits the act, because if they don't follow their own rules and they strip him of a very valuable property interest, they're going to have due process problems in a court. And I don't think it's
First of
by
all, it's
any
not
means.
like his asset goes away, Bill. His asset, they'll attach what the valuation is. He'll get more than that's even worth.
But
I mean,
but that begs the question. He doesn't want to sell his
right.
team.
That's right.
If he wants to sell his team, he doesn't need the league to force him to do it. He'll do it. You know, the thing that occurs to me is, I disagree with you. I think more owners than you think are going to not support this, and I'll tell you why. For all the reasons Mark just mentioned it to, the slippery slope. But more importantly, I think the owners are sitting in the bushes here, and they're hoping that Sterling will just walk away. And if push comes to shove and they have to vote, because Sterling says, as he's saying now, I'm not going anywhere. I'll fight you to the end. I think a lot of these people are going to say, you know what? This could happen to me. And they look at the precedent. In baseball, Marge Schott, owner of the Cincinnati, an out-and-out racist. She wasn't forced to sell a team. She wasn't banned for life. You know, you take a look at George Steinbrenner. He basically was convicted.
Sure.
He was suspended for a year. Here's a guy who basically made a conversation in private, despicable as it may be. And now you want to ban him for life, and you want to make him forfeit a property right.
I hear what you're saying, but don't you also think some of them say, time out. If this idiot lasted 20-something years and everybody knew, I mean, this was a schmuck of the first order, that I would hope that they would be able to look at themselves and say, in the 21st century here, I should be able to curtail, hopefully they don't have any, our racist rants here. We're going to try and keep blacks out of a stadium. I think that they have a greater self-image of this, that they'll be able to.
I have to say this, though. He's 85 years old. His generation, the word Negro was not the negative word you use to describe black people. So when you listen to what he said, I think you would be.
Are you defending Sterling?
No, what I'm saying is all the other owners are now starting to wonder what conversations they've had that have been recorded and are waiting to be used against them, because there's not one of them who hasn't had a conversation
even worse
that would be enough to get them out of the
You know the
league.
elephant in the room? Because this is what I do, it's what he does, it's what Mark reads transcripts all the time. What does Sterling know about the other owners? What have they said to him in confidence that he basically will bring out publicly if he's forced to
So do you
litigate
think,
this?
honestly,
This is what I think.
There is humanity too, which just says he may want to fight this, but at the end of the day, we know the league can do the fine. The league can immediately grant free agency to every single player on their franchise. The league can unilaterally decide to strip them of all their draft choices. The league cannot schedule them to be participating in the regular season or in the playoffs with anyone else. They can de facto make the team an island.
They're not going to do that because it'll antagonize the fan base too greatly, and the season ticket holders have money invested. Here's what's going to make
this is a much bigger PR problem.
Here's
for the
what's
league
going to make
than you basically assess it.
No,
to.
here's what's going to make the owners, and in my view, the only thing that will induce them to kick him out. If the players walk out on the game and don't show up and face
They already
any
said.
kind.
But Mark, we
What
knew
they
the
say
day that,
and what they do
I
are two
disagree with
different
you.
things.
Well, that's not going
the
to happen though
pressure
because
that they're
there's
going to face here, the players, 4 teams were not going to play that night, the day of the Silver
So
Press.
they
let
said,
them,
so
let
they
them
said.
do it.
Oh, they would.
If the cash cow is threatened to be killed, then they'll toss him out. That's the only way they're going to toss out a member of their own
We
fraternity.
can keep going around and around on this one. We're going to find out, though, before the NBA playoffs are all said and done, where the league or how far the league is going to be willing to go on this. All right, when we come back, a man is charged with raping a teenager at a Texas high school, and the judge gives him a slap on the wrist. You won't believe why she says she let him off so easy.